On this week's episode, we're talking a new Star Wars trilogy, how much money it will take to buy pictures, it regained its mojo, and is this okay? And is this the end of the Dark Universe? That doesn't sound good. And is this the end of the Dark Universe before it even starts? All this and more as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse. And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. And well, we just first off, I just want to thank everyone out there that listens to us on the podcast radio network. This show, the PCC Multiverse, has broken the top 5 in the rankings. It is now number 3 for the month of October. That's where we finished, and we truly appreciate it because it's all due to you out there listening and appreciating what we do. So we thank you so much for doing so. Talk pop culture. And who better to do it with me than the man, the myth, the legend, the magna cum laude of Humanica Media. Humanica Media is Josh Peterson. What's up, my friend?
What up, man? Hey, so I read this interesting article today that Blade Runner, Alien, and Predator are all in a shared universe. Did you see that?
I did. I read it actually yesterday. I scanned by it, and it all revolves around Roy Batty, I believe is what it was trying to allude to in the article by IGN. Yeah. Let's put it out there. But if that's the case, I think there's a lot of life left in the Blade Runner universe. Unfortunately, audiences don't entirely disagree or agree. Audiences don't entirely agree because the movie's only made $250 million worldwide. But
well, from what I understand, the original cut was supposed to be what came out to like 5 or 6 hours or something. So, and they were going to release it in 2 pieces. But
yes. I can't wait to see the director's cut on that one.
Yeah, well, if they didn't throw any of that footage out, but they had, it's interesting. Like I sit there and I think to myself, can you imagine how many hours of film you would have to sit through to finally connect all those pieces? You have to like go through with a comb and just put everything under a microscope. Like it's crazy, but that's cool. They're connected. But now I just wish that they would give the Alien franchise the ending that it deserves and not the fan service that, Ridley Scott thinks it seems to want.
Well, Ridley Scott was quoted as saying recently that there may not be as much life left in the Alien universe to create new iterations. Maybe there is. It just needs maybe some outside hands and maybe an outside pair of eyes to reinvigorate the series. But from Ridley Scott himself, we may be seeing less and less involvement in the Alien franchise going forward. But we'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be another great show here today on the PCC Multiverse. And we truly appreciate, again, you being... And we truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast. Again, we've got a great show lined up for today. But I did want to ask you one thing. This weekend, Thor goes against the heavy hitters, and I say that quote unquote, of Murder on the Orient Express and also Daddy's Home 2. So I ask you, can either of those 2 movies match up against Thor in any way, shape, or form this weekend at the box office?
I don't think so. Yeah, because Murder on the Orient Express, while cool, very cool concept, and I had to read the book in high school. I don't know about you, but like it was all right. But there's not enough people. Like it's sad.
I saw the original film just to give you an idea.
Okay, all right.
That old.
I know we kind of talk about this sometimes, but like people's interest in works based on old fiction is just not where it used to be. Look at look at John Carter of Mars. Look at actually, I think that's the only example I can come up with. But it's not, people don't really care that much. It's not like an action movie. There's nothing besides like a star-studded cast. Like it'll be something that attracts an older audience and people who are hip with the Academy Award scene or whatever. That's Academy Awards, that's movies, right?
Yeah, but Academy Awards, but this film is getting some mixed reviews, and we all know Daddy's Home 2 would probably not even fare well with critics. People are not
No, and
going to see that to be a critical favorite anyways.
right, and it's surprising that they even made a sequel to the first one, because from what I understand, the first movie was a train wreck.
I think it was just, again, Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell. They like to work with each other a lot. Obviously, the other guys being one of their also, both of them, one of their more successful movies as well. So I'm just hoping that Thor will come out on top again, because it is a pretty solid film. You and I both had strong feelings and strong thoughts, strong feelings and strong thoughts about it. In fact, if anyone cares to know what Josh feels like, check out his thoughts in his review, which you can catch on YouTube, or as well, both of our thoughts on our previous Pop Culture Cosmos episode number 62 as well. So we've got that out there for you. We think Thor is going to, even with a 50% drop, still have a comfortable win this weekend at the box office. But again, we've got a lot lined up for today, but let's get started with some breaking news that hit hit the news wire almost close to showtime here, when it was announced by Star Wars blog and all that Rian Johnson, who is directing the current iteration of Star Wars: The Last Jedi, is going to be responsible for helming, whether that's through directing, producing, but he's going to take responsibility on a new Star Wars trilogy. So I ask you, Josh, Kathleen Kennedy, the head of Lucasfilm, actually said in recent interviews as well that she'd like to see a great direction go with, Rey and Finn and Poe and all those characters for at least the next 10 years or so, which is great. But now they're talking about this new Star Wars trilogy, which would focus on something entirely out of the Skywalker realm. So I ask you, could this is this going to be a little bit confusing for people out there to follow, or how do you think this is all going to lay out, based off of what both was announced today and what Kathleen Kennedy has said in recent interviews?
You have to look at it in terms of release schedule. Like, what are we talking about here? Is Star Wars going to be given a 2-a-year release? Because how is this going to coexist with what's already slated to come out? Because I know they're talking about making more movies about the characters that we're seeing now past Episode 9, and they also have a bunch of what are we calling them? Star Wars stories slated to be released, intermittently in the following years. So this is going to mean that they're either going to, up their production to 2 Star Wars movies a year, or we're going to have, they're going to stop with the side stories, and we're going to have 2 trilogies existing side by side with each other. But that also raises a question, because I know that they're not going to have anything to do with the characters we're seeing right now. It's going to be new characters, a new place in the galaxy. How are they going to tie into each other? What's the timeline? Is it a prequel? Is it a sequel? Are we finally going to get, the Knights of the Old Republic or Origins of the Jedi or whatever it is? How's it all connected, and how are we going to see 2 different Star Wars sagas coexist with each other? And what's going to
Well, the only thing that has been confirmed from recent past, outside of the Solo movie coming up, is a Kenobi movie. The proposed, Boba Fett, the proposed other stories within that they've talked about, those have not been actually confirmed in production, to the best of my knowledge. But the Kenobi film, actually, I think, was a go, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, no, it was officially announced, but I know they have, there's other projects in the pipeline they've been rumoring for a while, like the Boba Fett, Yoda, whatever, other stuff that me personally I'm not interested in watching. But it's definitely going to be interesting, because I think the only way they could have these Star Wars exist side by side without fans clamoring for the 2, the leads in each thing to team up with each other, is to have them take place on 2 completely separate sides of a timeline. If that, what do you think of that?
That I agree with you on, because it would get totally confusing if you're going to have this timeline and in the same realm, but maybe on the other side of the galaxy, have something coexisting. But they have said in the statement that it's going to be something separate and completely different from what we're seeing with the Skywalker saga. So I believe you're right. It's going to be a separate time frame in and of itself that we'll have to come to know, we'll have to come to understand. And obviously they're pleased with, well, the big thing it tells me is obviously that Lucasfilm is pleased with Rian Johnson's work so much that they're going to, at this point in time, give him the ball and to run with it, similar to what, way back when George Lucas was with his own Star Wars trilogy that he got to oversee. That they're going to allow Rian Johnson to do the same thing with a completely new trilogy set in a completely different realm of the Star Wars universe. So that's definitely what I get out of it, is that they have so much confidence in him and that they like what they see with The Last Jedi so much. That tells me that they like his direction going forward.
Yeah. So it has, because he's done a good job, and I just hope that he doesn't try to make something that's too big for the scope of. I know the universe is a big place, but I just hope that he makes something in size and scope that is not, that doesn't overshadow what's being done on the main timeline. And I really hope it doesn't exist on the main timeline, mostly because of what we talked about just now, but also because it's not going to make sense to have two evil forces trying to destroy the same thing. It's that whole thing with what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Things stop making sense.
Well, the best thing about Star Wars is not obviously the special effects, not the glitz and the glamour and the space battles and all the excitement and whatnot. Those are outstanding parts of the Star Wars universe. But the best part of the Star Wars universe itself is the characters, how we've come to know them, how best they interact with each other, and how best do they tell the story. Because the story that gets communicated, the overall themes and the values are best translated through the Star Wars characters we've come to know and love. And to create that again in a separate trilogy, in a separate timeline, in a separate realm, is going to be a very difficult task to do as well as what was previously done, at least in the original trilogy, from what I'm able to, from what I believe and what I've seen and what I appreciate. We won't talk about the prequels, but that's beside the point. But I will tell you, the original trilogy built its characters so well, and from that, the story building and the foundation was there to create these awesome and unique stories that have touched our lives for so many years. And I'm hoping that Rian Johnson's opportunity with this new Star Wars realm will do the same thing. Any last thoughts on it?
If they were smart, they would give us what everybody's been clamoring for: the origin of the Jedi. That's all I can say. It's just it. Let's hope it's the origin of the Jedi, because that would be not only a huge cash cow, but it would be every fanboy's just dream to see that come to life. They started to touch on it in the books before they became non-canon, so if they could go back and revisit that story, that'd be fantastic.
Well, they've also hinted as well. There's been rumors that the Star Wars, Lucasfilm, and also Marvel, they're going to be creating new content for the Star Wars Disney streaming service, which seems like a no-brainer to both you and I and everybody else out there. That's probably not much of a rumor. It's probably going to be a fact, to obviously induce more subscriptions and more interest in the Disney streaming service once it becomes live. But what I want to say is that maybe if it's not represented in this new trilogy that Rian Johnson's working on, maybe the origin or the birth of the Jedi could be explained in something of that fashion.
Yeah, it could, but again, that explores the question that Marvel is now facing with all these television shows that aren't doing so well and all these spin-offs and whatnot. how much Star Wars is too much Star Wars. So if they make these shows, I don't want to see like 22 episode seasons because that's a lot of TV to sit there and watch. And I hardly have time to go to the movies and see, the regular Star Wars entries as it is. So, if they're going to do this, they need to do like maybe release 1 or 2 series a year and then make them 12 episodes like Marvel does with their Netflix series. That way you can binge it and then you just move on to whatever else you're doing after that. So I just don't want I think we are reaching a point, like if Walking Dead has shown us anything, it's that like fan people get over stuff. So I just hope that they don't do that with Star Wars.
I hope it's not as, I mean, I hope not as well. I hope they will not go overboard, but Star Wars has been a mass merchandise property now for 40 years. So, people that should have gone overboard on Star Wars, like us, right there, looking at the Stormtrooper, looking at me, and the, Millennium Falcon I'm actually wearing right now, tells me that for right now, at least we as consumers cannot get enough of Star Wars and just chomping at the bit to even get anything quality from the Star Wars realm. So if it's a good series that's an easy follow, like Star Wars Rebels, that obviously has been a very popular series for the Disney Channel. And if they could do something like that in a live action version that people would like to follow, I don't see the harm in it. And I don't see people overloading on Star Wars because there's so much of it out there that it's really, really difficult for a lot of fans to get overloaded on the Star Wars universe. I mean, there's some people out there who can only take so much of Star Wars. I get that, but there's so many others that are out there. I mean, my gosh, you put anything out there, Star Wars, and instantly it gains attraction and attention. Coming out next week, Battlefront 2, just as just the name alone will garner it millions of copies and millions of interest. So that tells you right there that the Star Wars name and the Star Wars universe still has a lot of life left in it.
No, you're right. Just, but I mean, like, keep it fresh, keep it interesting, keep giving us stuff. Give us closure with certain stories before you open up new ones. It's just. It's kind of like Assassin's Creed. Okay, like say everyone was really stoked. Reviewers and gamers alike are super stoked on the first like 2 or 3 games, and then eventually they saw like, dang man, this thing does not have an ending. They're just going to keep taking us through the same loops over and over again. So not that they're listening to this podcast, that'd be cool if they were, but if the producers of Star Wars take anything from the fans, don't do that. Like, keep it fresh, I guess, like, or else people will get burnt out because, like I said, look at The Walking Dead. People are getting over it. And it was like the biggest thing in pop culture for a long time.
True. The numbers have fallen, still garnering about 8 million people an episode, but that's not what they used to do when they were in the 12, 15 million area. So not too long ago when they were the cream of the crop. They're still, number one. They're still up there as far as ratings are concerned. But yeah, it's quite a difference when almost half of your viewing base has gone elsewhere. And I don't see that the same. And I don't see the same happening for Star Wars anytime soon. You're right. If they are not wise in how they go about their new projects, there definitely will be an overload at some point in time for a great majority of the Star Wars fans. What are your thoughts on this new Star Wars universe being constructed by Last Jedi director Rian Johnson? We want to hear your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Humanican Media, Game Source, and also Pop Culture Cosmos, and on Facebook and Twitter as well. So we got a great episode for you today. We've got Rob McCallum standing by. He's going to be talking about some Disney and also iTunes upcoming in the Cosmic Crossfire. Also as well, we've got Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Paydirt podcast. He's going to preview Week 10 in the NFL. And we've got a lot more to talk about when it comes to Call of Duty and also talking about Universal's Dark Universe. Has it gone dark? We'll talk about that and a whole lot more on this episode we've got going on right now. But first, we've got our good friend, Plasma Z. He's right here on deck. And this is Supernova, my personal favorite from him. And this is the PCC Multiverse. And we're back with the pop culture. And we're back with the PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. I want to thank you so much for being part. Thank you for checking in and listening to us on a weekly basis. We truly appreciate it. Whether you're listening to us at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network or on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, the Ace Podcast Network, Overcast, Player.fm, Google Play, Stitcher, Podcast.com, Mixcloud, the ESO Network, the Tangibound Network, Gonna Geek Network, Cast Crunch, and popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. No matter how you get our show, we just truly appreciate you listening. Or also as well, the number one show on the on the Podcast Radio Network, the Pop Culture Cosmos Show, every Monday night, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, as well on the Podcast Radio Network. We just truly appreciate you listening. And if you download and stream our shows, we always throw in some bonus content just for listening. But Josh has also got a great channel of his own. He does a lot of great work there. It's called Humanica Media. So Josh, what's going on with your awesome network known as Humanica Media?
Same old thing, man. New Super BS episode on it just came out yesterday. No, today. Yeah, it's out today. You know, there's not going to be an Inside Sports this week. We have a new podcast coming at you from. Someone approached me about a new one they want to do based on history, so that could be fun. As soon as it gets put up, and just editing time, man, editing time. But yeah, and you can also check out everything on the Attack of the Humanicans every Tuesday on the Podcast Radio Network.
That's right. It's 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. So you catch it every Tuesday. Attack of the Humanicans right on the Podcast Radio Network, indeed. So Call of Duty World War II has hit retail shelves. It's now ready to be downloaded at your convenience on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. So I ask you, Josh, it's out. It's garnering pretty strong reviews. And also Activision has reported it has doubled physical retail sales in the same amount of time as last year's version, which was Advanced Warfare. Infinite. With last year's iteration, that was Infinite Warfare. So I ask you, Josh, has Call of Duty regained its mojo as one of the top and premier games in the AAA video game market?
Well, from what I understand, it's not doing what they were hoping it would, though. Like it's garnering great reviews, but it's not selling as much as they were hoping that it would. Because I know that Call of Duty has, kind of been on the decline as far as sales go, but it's I'm confused unless like my information is off. But yeah, it's good to see. Hold on, how much have they sold so far?
I think you want to take a look at that. There you go. There's an article right there for you. Don't worry, I'll edit this part out. It's Activision Blizzard sales have jumped on Call of Duty because it surged 100% above what it's done. So basically, it's doubled. It's doubled what Infinite Warfare did last year this time.
All right. Well, I don't know, man. No, well,
this part will be all taken out. No one will know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But like, I was talking to the guys on the Super BS, and they're all telling me that's doing really bad. So I haven't I don't know where the information's coming from. But yeah, I'm probably not going to play it. I'll get it eventually if it's on sale or something. I'm not going to rush out to play it. But yeah, good for them. I hope that it brings back more of that era in video games. So I think that's what got us all interested in that type of like army game, Battlefield, Call of Duty. That was a time back when it was truly a game that catered to gamers and not to game sales. So it was it's a different landscape back then. But it's cool to see that people are coming back out to play it. We'll just see if it holds up over everything else that's coming out over the course of the holidays.
Well, it's I can tell you right now, it is, like I said, doing leaps and bounds what above last year's iteration is doing. I think people are excited to go back into those realms, and that reminds us of last year when EA's Battlefield 1 went back to World War I, and people were just jumping all over that as well because sales were much higher than the previous Battlefield iteration. So it tells me that people are excited to go backwards in time as opposed to going into modern and futuristic warfare. Although, yes, it does remind me of the time when Call of Duty 2, Call of Duty 3 came out, and I actually had great experiences with both those games. I think the campaigns were really solid on them, and I really liked the war mode on Call of Duty 3. They've brought back a war mode for Call of Duty World War II, so I'm glad to see that happening, although there's variations from what the original Call of Duty 3 had in mind with war mode, with the war mode. But still, it's nice to see that Call of Duty is now a premium option once again in the video game world. Definitely the zombies, I think, are still a big hit as far as that realm. And I heard from what I'm seeing, the campaign is a really, really solid campaign as well. Although still 6 hours to me is that's just too short in my estimation. I guess they're just using it as a buffer, or people's attention spans for Call of Duty players, or what have you. I don't know. I personally think that a lot of players that play Call of Duty wouldn't mind a longer campaign and more detailed campaign. Hopefully we'll get that from Star Wars Battlefront 2 and other games of that ilk going forward in the future, that they'll put more time and invest more time into it instead of just playing through it. It's done, never touching it again, and going straight to the multiplayer, because there is more to the multiplayer. There is more to Call of Duty than just the multiplayer aspects. In fact, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare for me was one of the best campaigns I've ever played through.
Yeah, I remember that being very intense because it's right around that time when you had terror attacks were basically like they were all over the place. It's something you're seeing in the news every day, and so you finally got to be somebody who was on the ground in that area and just taking care of business. And it was made more intense by how realistic a lot of that stuff was. Like the thing with the when you're the dude in the airport, like that was
oh, that was the advanced, that was Modern Warfare 2.
Oh yeah, but I mean, even still,
this was the most famous segment of that was the ghillie suit.
Yes, that's right. And you're in Chernobyl. Yes, I remember that. Yeah, that was just a very very intense game. Loved it. But yeah, like that's cool. Like you look back, it's kind of like when we look at movies that we liked as kids, and we're like, I wonder what they could do with that now. We're kind of seeing that happen in gaming, where you're seeing like, that was cool way back in the day. I wonder if they were to revisit something like that, what would it look like? And from what I can tell, it looks pretty cool so far. So, we'll have to wait and see. If the sales stay strong and the reviews stay positive. But I think things are looking good. I hope that maybe they learn their lesson from the past, like a lot of stuff like Ghosts and Infinity Warfare or whatever it is. Like they're just things that they're money grabs more than anything. And you're talking about EA giving more like Star Wars single players. I don't think that's gonna happen, man. If the what's happening is any indication. But then again, they did buy what did they buy? They bought the studio that made Titanfall. What's that studio called? It's I'm drawing a blank here.
Respawn Entertainment.
Yes, they did buy Respawn Entertainment, and a big piece of Titanfall 2 was the single player that just came out, and EA seems to hate single player games. So who knows what's going to happen in the future? I think they're moving more towards anything that they can make money off of with microtransactions. But yeah, we'll see. As for Call of Duty, that's cool. I hope that it does, because I'm seeing that, like, it's Activision and Blizzard now, and I'm seeing that I'm starting to feel like after BlizzCon, we're starting to get to a point where Warcraft fans are starting to want something new, and they're not really getting something new. So Call of Duty might be their flagship.
Call of Duty, yes, because for a long time it was their flagship when they were separated from Blizzard, and Activision for in the late 2000s, earlier this decade was the go-to unit, and we always criticized Activision at that time as being money grabbers and just going for the money and just doing stuff like that. Wow, lo and behold, years later, we're talking about EA being the entity that seems to be going for the money with the microtransactions. Although Destiny obviously will have its own microtransactions and stuff, that people, loot boxes and all that stuff by itself as well. So it has its own stuff, and of course Overwatch with its own loot box issues and loot box stuff as well that they've got going on. Both those, EA and Activision, are both centered on trying to obviously garner the most profit that they can. But it's nice to see Call of Duty regain some of its mojo and become a power player once again, because we thought, and we've speculated for a while now, exactly where Call of Duty was standing in the eyes of gamers as a fading star, that it looked like it was going to just keep on fading, and there would be no return in sight to its glory days. But this is a step in the right direction. It has doubled the last year's iteration of Call of Duty. So definitely for Call of Duty fans out there, it's a great sign that good times are once again headed for them indeed.
Yeah, you also have to look at the circumstances of its release though too. Like there's not a lot of games. Like I know Phil Spencer has been addressing this when it comes to first party participation on Xbox, but there's not, for both Xbox and PlayStation, there's not a lot of games like coming out for that people would rather play instead of Call of Duty. You have your Assassin's Creed, you have Call of Duty. So unless you own a Nintendo Switch, that's kind of all you're getting this holiday season.
Yes, absolutely. All you're going to see is third party for the majority of what's out there. But outside of Super Mario Odyssey and just a couple other smaller titles, Forza, whatnot, also as well Gran Turismo, there's just really not a whole lot of offerings from a first party standpoint. So PS4, Xbox One, they're heavily reliant on top tier third party franchises. It's good to see Call of Duty reaching that realm once again. What are your thoughts on Call of Duty World War II? Is it great to see it back gaining momentum as a big player in the game, big player in the world of video games once again? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Team Anakin Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. And coming up next, we've got Tyler Baker previewing Week 10 in the NFL right here on the PCC Multiverse. And we're back to close out the show. This is the PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. Josh, I know you heard the news. Universal's Dark Universe, which we've spoken about on these shows previously, being something that Universal had hoped, maybe still hopes, that they could center an entire universe around movies that would center around, for instance, The Mummy, Bride of Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula, whatever, all those horror movie icons from the past, that they could revive all of them and have them interact with each other in a universe type format. Well, lo and behold, we got some interesting news this week because obviously this summer there was a big time bust in the Mummy movie starring Tom Cruise that really did poorly at the box office and was a great disappointment. So, seeing how that worked out, it looks like both, well, the people behind this universe, writer producers Alex Kurtzman and Chris Morgan, looks like they are, well, actually they checked out. They have left Universal Pictures and left the dark universe scene. So it looks like right now, from a standpoint of, well, it looks like right now for Universal that the dark universe is going to be looking dark for at least the interim. So I ask you, is this a good move for Universal? Is this the best thing possible for Universal after the, well, I should say, critical and financial demise of the Mummy film?
It was a bad idea to begin with, and it was a bad idea that, I mean, I personally, I don't know about you, I was hoping it was a bad idea that turned into a good idea, but then we saw that it wasn't handled the way, like, universe building is very tough. Like Marvel, it makes more sense in Marvel and DC, but like, you know, you try to take something like, like monster films, and they don't intertwine with each other. They exist in the same genre, and you know, there are movies that like, Monster Squad and Van Helsing, like maybe he is someone that can tie all these things together. Castlevania did it okay, but
Well, I think they mentioned it in Mummy, if I remember correctly, that Van Helsing, I think, was going to be the one of the ties, along with Russell Crowe's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde character, would be someone that would tie in a lot of the stuff together.
yeah, but knowing that, wouldn't have made more sense to launch with a Van Helsing movie? Because
Yeah.
I don't understand, because the Mummy it's not a movie that's meant to exist inside that universe, and especially if you're using the Mummy as a launching pad, like it's already a twist to connect it, but then you want to use it as like the Iron Man of the dark universe. It doesn't make sense, because none of those twines were meant to go together, and just it was, going from Egypt to London, like it was just is a huge leap, and a very, like, even to people with big imaginations, like that was tough to handle.
I agree with you on that. Well, I reviewed The Mummy, and it wasn't a very good movie. I was kind of disappointed by it. It wasn't a very good viewing experience, and I thought it was just not the best work of Tom Cruise when I watched it, and I just did not see it being the successful thing that Universal had envisioned when they started out this process. The only saving grace for me was the interaction between Tom Cruise and Russell Crowe's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde character. I liked that interaction, and I wanted to see more of that going forward, but it looks like it's not totally out of the realm, but at this point in time, it looks like it's going to be on hiatus for quite some time, if not for good. And it looks like when your two main people behind it are they're hitting the road, then it looks like it's going to be getting very dark. Or as they say in the Marvel universe, the sun's getting real low right there for you. And it is getting dark in the dark universe indeed. What are your thoughts on the dark universe becoming dark, going dark? Are you happy that this parade of monster movie icons from the past are not going to come to fruition as well? At least it looks like it at this point in time. Are you happy that it's not going to come to fruition at this point in time, or at least in the near future? Are you glad that Universal's not going to try and connect the dots between all those monster movie icons? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanity Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. Josh, I just want to ask one last thing. Josh, before we head on out, any last words on what's going on in your realm of pop culture? What are you going to be checking out this weekend when it comes to pop culture? And also, so what are you looking forward to for the rest of this month?
I'm definitely I'm going to be finishing Super Mario Odyssey. I'm definitely, I think Assassin's Creed is going to be the next game I'm getting into. But I'm going to try to have a review up of a little game called N++ by the end of the weekend, and I'm still trying to. I'm looking forward to Justice League. I know we're going to talk about that next week, but as for pop culture, there's not really much in the movies I'm interested in seeing this week. But it's gaming season's shaping up to look real good. So I know Quake and Elder Scrolls are coming out, so my Switch is definitely going to be busy.
Well, there's some great things coming down the pike later this month. Like you said, Justice League is coming out next week, and I know we're going to talk about that. Plus, also as well, we're going to try and do what we can to provide you some great deals and great ideas going forward, not only for holiday gifts, but also as well for the upcoming Black Friday shopping, the Black Friday, and also as well Cyber Monday shopping season. So we're going to try and see what we can to get you those great ideas going forward, so you can go ahead and plan out your shopping realm as far as where you want your shopping list, so to speak, on what you want to get as gifts or for yourself as well. Consumer electronics, pop culture items, and things that'll suit your fancy. We're going to try and throw out some suggestions. I also want to let everybody know on our site, popculturecosmos.wordpress.com, I just posted a review of the Soft Tones pillow speaker. Tell you what, if you're the type of person that needs music or listen to a great show, audiobook, or a podcast like ones we know from Humanica Media and Pop Culture Cosmos, you like to listen to those, help you relax, put you in that Zen state of mind. You want to give the Soft Tones pillow speaker a try. I gave it a review. You can catch it on the popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. Yeah, I have some pretty good words to say about it, but you can read more about that and check it out and see if it's something for you. Plus, it might sneak in on one of our holiday gift guides coming up as well. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening, and here's hoping you have yourself a great day.